Interesting details, awesome sounds, and crazy features. That's what often attracts us to new sample libraries. And this is in no case an exception. Watchkeeper from Keep Forest is an insane library that I got my hands on, and it is completely different and very unique from anything I've tried before. Not only is it a strange collection of sounds from clocks and watches, but it has so many features that honestly straight up make me a little bit jealous as a Kontakt fan, as a Kontakt coder. Like seriously, there's some amazing stuff that's going on under the hood that I don't even know how they did it. So let's check it out and see how it sounds. Hey, my name is Steve and welcome back to Command Shift New. Keep Forest reached out to me with a copy of Watchkeeper, their new library built for Kontakt 7 and Kontakt 7 Player. Watchkeeper is sort of a percussive collection of clockwork samples that you can use as sort of rhythmic or mechanical pulses and rhythms that really add a lot of life and detail across all genres. As a media composer and, let's face it, a sucker for sample libraries, they knew I'd be interested in this one. In return for a copy, they asked me to do an honest review and sort of share some of the features of this library. So while this copy is free, it is entirely up to me on what I'm saying right now, my complete and unmoderated thoughts on this library. Like honestly, I think it must be like kind of nerve-wracking for companies to send out codes to their, their brand new library that they spent so much time and effort on, knowing that I could full well drag them through the mud because it could be total garbage. But did I think that about Watchkeeper? Absolutely not. I am glad to say that I loved it. It's fantastic and it blew me away in some areas. So let's check it out, see and hear what it can do, and find some of the features that really set it apart from other libraries I've used. Firstly, Watchkeeper has some amazing sounds. Like who would have thought about clockwork as a sample base? It kind of makes sense though, because there's a lot of genres out there that use that to build tension, and film score is one of them. A lot of sound design and treatment have gone into the patches, and that creates the sounds that we're hearing in some of these patches. But you also have some raw samples as well, some raw patches that give you the opportunity to do your own sound design, which I'm definitely a big fan of, being able to have that flexibility. Beyond just the sounds themselves, there are some incredible sequencing abilities within this library. Really complex in some areas, but also really easy to get a good sound out of pretty quickly. You can program sequences for things like velocity, for pan, for pitch, for the filter. There's a lot of really cool controls. You can adjust the step sequences, the speed and frequency of them, the steps and divisions within those steps, the values and the positions of these steps, and you can even randomize the chance of these steps occurring. So it gives you a kind of probability matrix, or a way of kind of adding in a little bit more of a human type feel to it. If you aren't feeling too adventurous, you can let the program sort of do it for you with some preset rhythms, and you can just kind of select one that sounds great, but you have a lot of control if you want to dive in there and easily change things. And some of these presets are a great way to kind of start exploring the library, exploring the sounds, and then tweak them to your liking later. And I haven't even shown you the effects yet. The effects are brilliant. There's a whole panel dedicated to these effects, and there's something like 240 different effects chain presets that you can choose from. But it seems like pretty much every Kontakt effect that's available is kind of thrown here onto this interface for you to use, and you can easily swap them in and out. So it makes it so much easier to work with. There's something like over 2,000 tones and over 2,000 snapshots or something like that in this library. So it is massive, and there's so much to play with and a lot of depth to it as well. There's so much control that I kind of think one downside is it feels sometimes overwhelming, the sheer number of stuff that you can change. For me, the sign of a good library is one that you can pull out of the box, hit a few keys, and be inspired by that sound, right? I think this library definitely does that, and it has some amazing patches, but those patches are sort of like individual building blocks, and the multis That's where this library really shines and gives you fantastic inspiration straight out of the box with the press of a single key. So Kontakt actually has this feature built in. You can stack more than one instrument, meaning you can play them all together. And on these percussive libraries like this one, it means you've got individual sequences you can use, for example. So you've got a lot more control. In this multi-section in the patches library, you're going to find so many to choose from. There's some great ones that are artist and genre based. There's also some sound design ones that give you specific tasks like impacts or rises or slowdowns and that sort of stuff. But they're all combining these individual patches that we saw before into these sort of mega patches that have this incredible sound and control. This is fantastic because it's so easy to use, but so powerful to control. You can balance individual layers like the volume and pan within each one of those blocks or patches. You can combine layers, combine different textures together, use different sequences for different textures or different hits. You can tweak individual sounds, or you can even apply different effects to different sounds depending on what you want. Honestly, the list goes on with the amount that you can control when you break apart individual elements in your sequence. Because you're dealing with a lot of different patches in this multi-system, up the top they've created a pretty unique system of being able to control all of these at once within the patch, which is fantastic. Up here you'll find a simple and advanced mode, and you'll be able to dive in with as much control as you like to change things like pitch variations, tone variations, ways to vary the sequence, to shift it up and down, to change the way that it responds. And this is changing it across all the different patches in that multi, so it's a quick way of changing the sound and tailoring it to what you want. Again, this library just shows how complex and how much control you can have over the sound and all the different aspects of this library if you want, but how easy it is to just hold down a single key and get an amazing sound out of it. There are honestly some amazing and cool features that I can't even really look at right now. Things like being able to import your own sample and import and export MIDI patterns from that library. That's just fantastic, but I feel like I need so much more time with this library to really get to the grips with it. As I've said, this library can be very powerful in terms of control, and that does make it more complex, or at least showing you a lot of more complex options. Yes, you can play just one sound and not even touch any of these controls and get something amazing, but my one critique for this library would be that it feels like there's a very heavy learning curve to get across all of this detail. And I would have really loved to have seen things in Kontakt like UI help messages, so that when you hover over a control, it comes up with a little message that says, this is what this control does. Simple things like being able to turn on the sequencer on a patch that doesn't have a sequence enabled. That took me a little while to kind of figure out. I'm not entirely sure why. There's just so many on buttons and so many buttons all over the place that it would really be nice to have those UI features tied to each of those controls, so you can get that little help message coming up, showing us what it can actually do and what it's used for. I think it would make the very complex UI a little bit faster to learn, and you wouldn't have to constantly feel like you're referring back to a manual or a video or something, hoping for the best. That critique though is from someone who wants to dive into all those controls and wants to go really in depth. If you're looking for just a simple library that gives you some amazing percussive sounds from Clockwork Samples, this library is easily that, and it will do it right out of the box, which is fantastic. And I think that's important for a library to do. So is this library for you? Well, I can tell you that it's definitely for me. I can see myself using this library in the future, particularly for film scores, building tension in scenes. Whether it is right for you is entirely up to you, but I do hope that this review gave you a little bit of an insight into it and maybe helped you in that decision. I look forward to checking out some more of this stuff with you in the future, but until then, subscribe on your way out and I will catch you in the next one.